Right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this latest webinar from Conservation Careers. I hope you're all safe and well wherever you are in the world right now. My name's Nick from Conservation Careers. Thank you for joining us. So tonight, this webinar, the next in the series, a monthly free series of webinars that we run here at Conservation Careers, is all about the importance of communication skills for conservationists. And we're focusing on this because within the sector, there's a real kind of growing realization that we need to do much more to share our messages and to encourage more support and more action, really, if we're going to save more wildlife globally. So as a result, we're seeing more conservation employers, I think, than ever before, looking for staff, particularly with communication skills. So we thought, let's talk about this specifically in a webinar tonight and kind of showcase some of the skills, the top skills that employers are looking for that will help you to secure jobs and to get going more quickly in your job hunts. Now, good evening. Thank you, Valentina. Good to see you as always. Thanks for joining. So it'd be really nice actually to follow Valentina. Actually, if you can just say hi in the kind of the comments stream. Thank you for joining us. So it's like, where are you and what's your name? So my name's Nick and I'm in the UK. Okay. And it'd be great to see a few more people, tell us where you are as well and see where you are in the world. That'd be lovely. Now, while you're doing that, let me just introduce our co-host, if you like, for the evening, our guest. Joining us tonight is Lloyd Gofton. Now, Lloyd is our in-house communications course coach. He's got over 20 years communications experience built in the agency sector across public relations, social media, content marketing, digital marketing, and much more. He's a jack of all comms trades. And during his career, he's worked with a variety of brands, including O2, WWF, Greenpeace, RSPCA, Virgin Atlantic, Samsung, Honda, and many, many more, including Pizza Express. Let's not forget them. Now, Lloyd is a great supporter of a number of marine conservation, African wildlife, and also animal welfare organizations. You'll hear a little bit more about his marine work in a minute too. So before I kind of keep talking, Lloyd, welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Nick. Lovely to be here, and great to see so many people logging in from all around the world. I can see Toronto, US, obviously lots of people in the UK. I'm also here in the UK on the south coast, a little bit further away than Nick. But yeah, lovely to see you and look forward to talking to you all over the next hour.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Gosh, welcome, Libby, Scotland. We've got Katia in Portugal, Veronica, Ecuador, Tatiana in Cape Town, South Africa. How's it? Priscilla in Brazil. You guys are spread all over the world. Harriet in Wales, and hi from Malaysia. How's it too? Good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome, and well done for getting in as well. This is limited to 100 this evening. We had nearly 600 signups. So we are live streaming to YouTube. So if you bump out and can't get back in for any reason, go to YouTube. You can still watch us there. Okay. But great. Thanks for joining. Good to have you all here. Now, as you heard, the focus of the webinar this evening is really about the importance of communication skills for conservationists. Now, what we're going to cover over the next hour is a few things. First, why are communication skills so important for aspiring and professional conservationists? That we're going to talk a little bit about that and hear Lloyd's thoughts around that too. We're then going to hear of an example, sort of bring it to life really, of a communications campaign in conservation. What was it? How did it work? And what difference did it make? Just as one example of communications in action. Okay, and then we're going to look at the top 6 communication skills most sought after by conservation employers. Now, we're going to have a bit of time for Q&A at the end as well. So Lloyd's very kindly said he would answer a few questions. So I'll be around for sort of 10, 15 minutes towards the end too to answer your questions. If you do have questions, you can ask them as we go. That's fine. Use the Q&A button, okay, not the chat stream. So find Q&A, put your questions in there. But feel free also to wait till the end. And what we're going to ask you to do is kind of upvote. Okay, so you can go in, read the questions that are there, vote on your favorite ones, and we'll just work from the top down and see how far we get in 10 minutes. But there is going to be time for your questions. And that's always a really fun bit of these webinars for us too. And also, please hang around for the end too, because we're going to have a bit of a special announcement too. So I won't kind of break any surprises now, but I'm excited to kind of share a little special communications announcement towards the end of the webinar too. So hang around for that. Now, quick poll before we kind of get into the survey into the webinar, sorry. Now, what I want to do, I'll share the poll now. Let me find my poll button. Launch poll. There we go. So in front of you right now, you should see a question which says, Do you regularly see communication skills listed in conservation job adverts? So when you're kind of, skimming across sites like Conservation Careers and others looking at jobs, do you regularly see employers looking for communication skills? Really wanted to see what your thoughts are this evening. I can see the numbers ticking up. 50, 60% of you have now done this, 70%. Okay. 80%. I'm going to end the polling now because we're quite stable on the results here. End poll, share results. There you go. And it's quite striking, actually. And I think that sort of says everything to us, really. So 78% of you are saying yes. You're seeing, when you're looking at job adverts for the jobs that presumably you're interested in personally, whichever area that might be, and I'm assuming you guys are the full span of different jobs that are available out there, 78% of you are seeing communications skills listed in those adverts. And I think that reflects really why we're running this webinar. Okay, because communications are a really sought after skill now by employers. And why is that? Why are communication skills so sought after? Well, we analyzed 29,767 exactly conservation jobs from over 100 countries. And what we found reflected really what you guys have just shared with us, which is 41% of those jobs, of all those jobs, explicitly wanted people with communication skills, okay, or experience, as part of their requirements. So more than ever, conservationists are being asked to be really good communicators as well. Of those 29,000 or 30,000 really, 2,700 were communication specialist roles. Okay, so there are things like communications officers, marketing managers, social media officers, doing things like planning communications activities, writing, getting press and media attention, engaging audiences on social media, delivering campaigns, blogs, podcasts, and everything else. Okay, often as part of a wider role. So you might be doing science or research or marine, whatever it might be, but comms is a core part of what you're doing. And the great Sir David Attenborough said, late last year in September, that saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And I think I totally agree with that. And I think that, as always, he sort of encapsulated it in a single sentence there. Saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And really interesting, actually, Lloyd, why do you think that might be? Why is Sir David seeing that, communications being so important in the battle to save wildlife globally?
Yeah, well, first of all, amazing that Sir David Attenborough said that from my point of view. But I think the key point he's trying to get across, and the key point that we're seeing, is that in terms of our understanding of the issues that the planet faces, we're fairly clear on at least the bigger picture issues that are out there. What we're lacking is really that action point, that conversion of the general population to understand those issues, to understand what they need to do to resolve some of those issues, and how and make them more enthusiastic about actually trying to solve the problem. So I think from a communicator's point of view, the place where we can be really valuable to the bigger issues is by helping link the scientific data and the big problems to the people and say, look, people, we've got some serious problems here, but we can solve them if we work together, if we do it now. So I think that's where Sir David Attenborough is coming from. It's certainly something that I would support in terms of it being a major challenge for the conservation sector to get the message out there, to get people acting.
Yeah. And I guess it's that realization, as you say, that, scientists, researchers, conservationists know what they need to do. Often the solutions are there. We just need to mobilize more support. And what we've been good at today is kind of preaching to the converted, those who are already interested. But what we need to do is reach a much bigger audience and mobilize much more support. And that's exactly what Lloyd and Sir David, putting you together, are both saying. Now, let's bring this to life a little bit. Let's talk about a specific communications campaign within conservation, something which, Lloyd, actually, you've been actively involved in today, okay, with TV cameras down the south coast of England. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Let me just get things up and going. We're all getting quite nifty with Zoom nowadays. So all being well, can you see my screen, Lloyd? Have I done that right?
Yeah, no, you are great. You're looking good.
Good. Okay, great. So over to you. Let's talk through an example of a communications campaign within conservation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, as you can see by the screen, is talking about super trawlers, which is an issue you may be aware of. If you're not, then very quick summary of what a super trawler is. It's a fishing vessel that is over 100 meters long, and they basically drag nets over a mile long over set set areas across the ocean. Within those nets, they're targeting one specific species. And of course, as anyone would know, when you drag nets a mile long over a long period, a long area, you're not just going to catch one species, you're going to catch a whole load. Now, I volunteer for an organisation called the Sussex Dolphin Project. That's in the south coast here in the UK. And throughout the last part of last year, we experienced what I call an invasion of super trawlers. Now, the super trawlers have been visiting the English Channel for many years. However, we felt there was a massive upswing in the last year. And what we saw, as you can see on the screen, is a mixture of things. One, we started seeing lots of bycatch dolphins and porpoises, unfortunately, on our beaches. And as you can see with that common dolphin there, which was actually found a 5-minute walk from our office, there's clear signals that that has been a dolphin caught through bycatch. There's a rope attached to it where it's been winched over the side out of the net and then dropped in the water and landed on our beaches. So what we wanted to do as an organisation that's focused on dolphins and porpoises and marine mammals in total was really to start raising awareness of that. And you can see there at the bottom of the screen just a couple of examples of the coverage that we saw. And actually our project lead there, Thea Taylor, who did threaten to join us tonight, so hi Thea if you're there, is the person we put up to speak about these issues. And also you can see some local media coverage there on the other side. So Nick, if you wouldn't mind moving on the slides.
Yep, already did that, sorry.
Thank you, no, that's quite all right, I was wittering. So, so this is what we were used to seeing, I guess. Lovely images of dolphins. You can see bottlenose and common dolphins here frolicking in the Sussex seas. That's what we love to see. We run a citizen science project where we get people to send in sightings. And we see these types of videos regularly. And as we kind of move forward, if we can move on to the next slide, Nick, we saw that beyond that kind of research based, and we were also focused on education and awareness, of course, what we were beginning to see when the super trawlers were here was very much a different story. We were seeing fundamentally bodies of porpoises and dolphins piling up on the beaches. And these are the PG rated versions of images that I can show you. They are much worse, unfortunately, that we were seeing. And of course, we felt powerless. We, as people who love the marine environment and cetaceans specifically, felt very much that we wanted to do something, but what could we do? We can't stop super trawlers. They are fishing perfectly legally in international waters. However, of course, dolphins move over considerable distances, so they're no respecters of international boundaries. So we were seeing these bodies mount up, and we wondered, what could we do? How could we make an impact? And of course, working with the team there, if we could move on to the next slide, Nick. Working with the team, we decided that the best thing we could do to strike back, if you like, or to make a difference, was to start telling the world, was to turn our issues that we were seeing in Sussex into a global campaign. And we wanted everyone in the world to be able to see what we were seeing. And to do that, we looked at a number of different areas, but the most powerful aspect was really through the media. And as you can see here, this is mostly UK press, but obviously has a worldwide audience as well. We also had TV interviews as well. We looked at the issues as they were impacting us. And again, at the end of last year, if you're up to speed on British politics, you'll know that the UK was exiting the European Union. And there was certainly in certain media aspects, they would believe that the show of force from the super trawler fleet, of which we had 11 super trawlers fishing in our waters around November and December last year, was in direct relationship to Brexit. So the trawlers, which themselves are mostly Dutch and Russian, are coming over here to show that they can come back, whether the UK are leaving Brexiting or not. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant. We jumped on that as an issue. So for certain media that were more political, we jumped on the Brexit issue. For other media that want to look at the impact on people, we jumped on that issue. For others that wanted to see the dolphin bycatch, we jumped on that. We took pictures, we engaged with the fishing community. And as you might remember from the first slide, we saw some what we'd call artisanal fishermen with rods, showing what they thought of the super trawlers. From the first slide, we work closely with the fishing community to get intelligence, I guess is a good way of putting it. We got that picture there of the Alida super trawler from a fisherman himself who sent it into us, said they kept us well up to date. They don't like them either. We also engaged with the local community. We shared every time we found a dolphin or porpoise through our social profiles. We shared that with press as well. And we fundamentally turned a bad situation into as much as we could in terms of publicity, and tried to turn that into something positive, if you like. We couldn't directly save dolphins, but we hoped we could put pressure on. And what that led to was not only built up awareness in terms of our local community, not only in terms of the great media coverage, so we managed to amplify that message, not only in terms of putting pressure, and in fact, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, mentioned on the 3rd of January that now that the UK had exited the European Union, we could do something about what he called these Hoover trawlers. Now, I'm not saying that was down to our campaign. Obviously, there were many other marine conservation organizations who were putting pressure on as well. But it was great that together we could join and put some pressure on and actually have the Prime Minister mention this as an issue when he was probably thinking about a great many other issues around exiting the European Union. So, and finally, I guess the other point that really excited us as well was that we got to have high-level conversations with some of the major marine conservation charities as well, who saw what we were doing, who had seen the coverage and wanted to get involved. They offered help. And we have a number of conversations ongoing with those. So from a small local marine charity to talk to some of the big guys around the world about these issues, and having developed that as well, it shows that although the situation seemed to be dark and it wasn't clearly something that we wanted to happen, we managed to turn that into somewhat of a positive by raising awareness, by linking into government, by building relationships with our community, and by building better partnerships with our other marine conservation partners. So yeah, in summary, it worked as well as it could.
Yeah, and it's a great example, I think, of how communications can really punch well above its weight in terms of impact. You know, when done really well, it can have huge impact. You know, for a small charity to kind of reach national press, to reach the attention of a prime minister in a busy time, to talk about this sort of issue is just shows, you know, what sort of impact this sort of work can have. You know, the really striking images there too that you were sharing. So yeah, thank you, Lloyd. And I know that's still an issue that you kind of still actively battling with, actually, you know, almost on a daily basis too, through the Sussex Dolphin Project. So it's great to hear about what's still going on there. So let's move along then. So what we're going to talk about next is when we talked earlier about the review, so 29,000 and so many jobs that we looked at, and of those 41% talked specifically about requiring communication skills. We then, while looking at the review, looked at, well, what are the sorts of communication skills specifically that are most sought after by conservation employers? What are the key things that employers are looking for across the sector, across the many job types as well, that are really important to employers? Because communications, it talks about so many different things, it covers so many different elements, you know, but what are the most important ones? So let's talk through them. What we're going to do is we're going to talk through, you know, what exactly is each of these 6 elements? What do we mean when we talk about the things that we'll mention in a minute? You know, why is it important to conservationists? And then also we want to kind of share some tips as well to help you guys to kind of get some experience, or to kind of get going, you know, to get some experience of doing this that you can then put on your CVs, resumes, applications, and help you to kind of secure the jobs that you really want within the sector. So first one up then, the first one we're going to talk through like 6 skills. Okay, so the first one is communications planning. Okay, communications planning, which I think is something that a lot of people, we know that planning communications is important, but also few of us really understand what actually is it. How does it work, you know, and what's involved? It's intuitively kind of a scary thing, if I'm honest. So, Lloyd, you know, what is communications planning? You know, why is it important to conservationists? You know, and can you even share as a bit of a tip as to, you know, that will allow people to kind of just get going with comms planning, you know, in a certain way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the plan is essential. And with anything you're doing, of course, you should start with a plan, but that's no more important than it is in communications, because we have so many disparate aspects moving. And as I mentioned just a moment ago in the case study, you know, we're working through social media, we're working through press release, we're working through with media, we're working through content marketing, video, whatever that might be. It can't just all happen at once. There needs to be a plan in place. As soon as you say that, you see people's faces drop. They go, "Oh my God, what's the plan? How do I do a plan? That's the kind of stuff that we will talk about in future through the course. But also, what we want to do is really break it down to what's relevant. So my tip would really be, when you're planning, you need to understand two things. That's the objectives of the organization. So if we go back to the Sussex Dolphin Project, our objective ideally was to stop the super trawlers. We knew that couldn't happen, but we wanted to raise awareness. We wanted to reach out to put pressure on legislators, on government, build our community, and work with our partners. And our audiences was really those. So it was the media, it was the press, it was our community, it was those key aspects. So we understood what message we wanted to get out. We understood how our audience was. So the plan is really how you achieve that, how you take those objectives to that audience, which tactics are you going to use. Note those down. Across a month or two, you have a plan. It's a simple process, really. It doesn't need to be complicated.
But yeah, breaking it down to objectives and audience, just gives you that focus, gives you that clarity from the very beginning. So I think that's a great tip. And comms planning is, when done well, it makes all the difference, and when done poorly, I guess we can all be, for want of a better term, like busy fools, like not doing things effectively, not reaching goals because we didn't even know what those goals were in the beginning. So great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Les. That was number one, comms planning. Super important, super scary, but doesn't need to be. Actually, when broken down, can be quite simple but very effective. Second one up, okay. And I was just reading a comment as well while Lloyd was there too, saying you're enjoying this discussion. Thank you, Collins Lugon. That's really kind. I saw that. Thank you. Writing engaging copy is the next one. This is the second skill that employers are looking for. They want people who can write engaging copy. So in the written form, engage people within about conservation, topics, particularly online. So Lloyd, what do we mean when we talk about engaging copy, writing engaging copy? Why is it important to conservationists? And have you got a tip to share with our audience tonight?
No, completely. So I guess, again, when you're working communications, everything pretty much starts and ends with the written word. So being at least understanding the formats you need to work with is crucial. You don't need to be a novelist. You don't need to be an amazing writer. I'm certainly not an amazing writer. However, I know which aspects of the written word I need to pull into which tactic we're using. So I can understand the format of a tweet, and I can understand the format of a Facebook post, and I understand the format of a press release. I understand the format of different aspects of how you script a video. So as long as I understand those processes, I can build that out. So when we're talking about communication skills in terms of writing, it's really about understanding the what you're doing rather than the talent, if you like. So we're not all talented writers. That's not something you can specifically teach. However, you can teach the aspects of that. And the tip would really be something, again, that we often use in the communications world, is the inverted pyramid structure, where we basically turn a pyramid on its upside down. So you've got exactly. Thank you, Nick. That's beautiful. An upside down triangle. You work with that when you're explaining something using the written word, and I use that. Try to use that anyway when I'm explaining it verbally as well. So you get the top information up. So the key information: the who, what, where, when, why, how, up front, and everything else falls out in order beneath that. So you don't worry about the bigger picture at the top. You worry about the facts at the top, and then you break out the story from there. So again, writing isn't necessarily about talent. If you've got that talent, amazing, it's really helpful, but it's about understanding the process.
Okay, so there's a secret sauce then for doing it well, and you don't need to be a novelist. I like that. And this inverted pyramid structure. I know we're going quite fast this evening and covering stuff. You might be thinking, oh, I didn't quite get that. But we can share more resources online as well, and you can go off and Google that. But this inverted pyramid, about putting the most important stuff front and center, okay, and then fleshing out from there is what that's all about. So that's a great tip. Thank you, Lloyd. And that works so well with things like press releases, and actually leads us really nicely into number 3, the third skill that conservation employers are looking for, which is generating press coverage. And I guess press releases are part of that. The inverted pyramid is used very regularly in that, but generating press coverage. Now, we just heard a good example there of the Sussex Dolphin Project, super trawlers, good example of that. So just paints a bit more of a broader picture, if you could, please, Lloyd. Why is press coverage more generally important across the sector? And do you have a bit of a tip? Because you are one of the best people I know in the industry of getting press coverage for conservation issues. So what can you share with us tonight?
Yeah, and I think, again, so press coverage, a lot of people think that's what communications is, getting press coverage. It's part of it. It's not the entirety. And it's also one of those things that's often called a dark art, or it's referred to as being smoke and mirrors. So it's in when I started out in PR 20 years ago, it was very much who you knew, not what you knew. That doesn't exist. The problem with relying on contacts is that journalists move around. They change, journalists come up, journalists change all the time. So it doesn't matter who you know. And I know plenty of journalists, just because they know me, they're not going to write a story for me. It still has to be a good story. So as with writing, there is a format, there is a process to developing press coverage. And the tip, I guess, based on that format, is very much understanding the process of the journalist. So you're not trying to write that article, you're trying to work with them to give them the information they need to allow them to do that job. So if I contact a journalist, of course I sell them a story. So again, if I use the Sussex Dolphin Project, the headline is dolphins and porpoises are washing up on our beach dead and they're being killed by these super trawlers. So that grabs attention. But then I provide them with the data based on the amount of dolphins and porpoises we've seen over the year, when super trawlers are in the water, when they're not in the water. Give them sort of information like that, give them background on how often the super trawlers are here, where else they are in the world, how big a problem this is in the world. Give them that information, suggest angles, offer them relevant people to speak to. So again, in the case of Sussex Dolphin Project, we have a marine biologist on our staff, who's Thea, who I mentioned earlier. So we put Thea up front and center because she can talk about this sensibly. We bring in other people, maybe from the government or wherever they may be, and we package that and we give that to the journalist. And that fundamentally is how you develop a piece of press coverage. I've just done it for you in 2 minutes. It's not about writing the story for yourself. It's not about trying to teach the journalist how to do that. They know that. It's about giving them the information they need to write a great story. It's about making them look good. And that's your job as a communicator.
That's great advice. Thank you. And how do you go about finding the right people to contact within press? So, with the super trawler issue, do you already have a little black book and you all know the names? But if you don't, if you're like me or anyone else, where do you start in terms of making contact? And you pick the phone up, do you send an email? What's that practical connection? How do you do it?
Yeah, so I do now know the right people to talk to about super trawlers, unsurprisingly. However, I didn't in the first place. So it's very simple. We all have Google, or whichever search engine there are, search engines available. We put into Google whatever issue we're looking at. So in my case, super trawlers or marine conservation. We find out the highest rated journalists who are writing on that. We track them down, which is fairly easy with the web in terms of the way it is, their email address, and we contact them with a relevant pitch. So again, you can actually buy into media services where you get their contact details, but you don't need to. With half an hour's work, you could have a list of 10 people that are going to write your story for you. So again, there's no secret sauce to this. It's just understanding the process.
That's great. Thank you. That's great. So that was number 3 then. Generating press coverage. Employers want people who can do what Lloyd does, in terms of generating press coverage. You can see why that is so important. Number 4, I wonder if you can guess what that might be. It is using social media. Something which is so important nowadays, reaching big audiences quickly for free, is a great way of engaging, and developing conversations with people in the sector and maybe converting behaviors, and bringing people into the movement. So Lloyd, another thing you're really good at, social media. Why do you think conservation organizations are kind of, jumping on social media as an opportunity? And what tip, again, would you share with people, if they wanted to be better at using it from a wildlife conservation standpoint?
Yeah, so again, social media, there's a lot of myths around social media. I'm a big myth buster in terms of communications. I think the biggest myth is that social media is for young people. It's not. So Facebook is 17 years old this year. People have been using it for many years. The demographic of Facebook is getting older and older. Yes, there are certainly social networks for younger people and social networks for older people, but the key is it's about reaching an audience directly. It's not through a media lens. It's not through a journalist's idea of what the story is. It's direct conversation with your community, and that allows you a huge amount of opportunity to engage with people. And what I mean by engage is actually hold a conversation. So listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're asking, answer those issues, and build a conversation. So that's what I would call engaged community. It's not an audience. So it's very much how we use social media, which is possibly the most powerful development in the comms world, certainly in the time I've been doing it. I started pre-social media, and halfway through my career, social media came in, well, quite a while ago now, actually 15 years ago, to be used communications. And that very much changed the way that we communicate. It made us more honest, and it made us better at our job. So it's really powerful. And I guess that tip is what I've really mentioned to you, is looking at your social media audience as a community, as equally useful to be listened to as they are to be broadcast to. And I always talk about many brands broadcasting, talking about themselves all the time. And if you met someone in a bar or wherever and they were constantly talking about yourself, you quickly switch off and walk away. It's the same for anyone engaging with a brand. They don't want to hear about how amazing their brand is all day. They want to hear about the issues that are relevant to them. They want to hear about how the world is affecting them, how the issues that the brand can solve for them. It's not just about the brand. So again, listening to what your community needs, answering that, that's how you build a community, and that's how you succeed in social media.
Yeah, and listening so powerful, isn't it? When you're trying to sort of serve an audience, if you like, serve your supporters, generate more support, you have a direct line into that conversation now, and you can sort of really learn very quickly, what people are interested in, and be able to kind of, to serve them and generate more support that we need, within the movement. So yeah, you can sort of see why conservation employers wanting more and more, and not just, I guess, also we see it from our side, they're not just recruiting young people as well. It's not just about being for young people. You get the young people to come in and do the social media. Actually, they want people who have real experience and skills, a bit like you, Lloyd, can come in and really use these tools effectively, to deliver conservation. And huge opportunity. And we're still probably learning how to do this properly, I guess, within the sector, which is, part of this evolution that's always going on. Great. So that was number 4, I think it was. So 2 more to go at the top 6. I have seen a couple of questions dropping into the chat. If you want to kind of put them into the Q&A, and then while you're listening to us talking as well, feel free to jump into that Q&A. I see there are 6 questions there already. Feel free to vote up the ones you like. So add your votes to them, because then we'll know which are the most popular for you guys in the audience. We can start working down when we get to that Q&A in a minute. So thanks for doing that, guys. So next one up, number, I think it's 5, is creating content for communications campaigns. Now, it feels like quite a big thing, actually. It could be so many different things, but employers want people who can create content for comms campaigns. Lloyd, what do we mean by creating content, and what tip would you like to share again with our guys?
Yeah, so I guess it really comes back to, if we can use that social media example, and content isn't purely on social, but we've learned so much about content through social media. It's, again, if we understand that an audience wants something, whatever they want to know. So in terms of, again, we'll use the Sussex Dolphin Project. They want to understand what a super trawler is, because certainly when we started this in Sussex, there wasn't a huge understanding of what a super trawler is. So they don't understand that here. So what piece of content can we provide them that would quickly tell them the key information? So, as I said, bigger than 100 meters, dragging nets a mile long, carrying up to 6,500 tons metric weight, all that kind of stuff. Well, that works beautifully as an infographic, because it delivers information quickly. It does it visually, and they can understand it. So again, we could do that very quickly. Or a video, again, a very brief summary, a minute piece of video that explains that. And then if we're talking about the impact on dolphin, the physiology, all those kind of things, why they're dying, in terms of when the super trawlers are there, then we need people to understand that actually dolphins are mammals. They need to breathe air. They can't live very long in a fishing net, big surprise, and they drown. So again, that kind of information we could turn into either a very simple piece of graphic image, or again, we could turn that into a video if we wanted to get particularly gruesome. But it's about understanding what your audience wants, looking at how that audience consumes information, and then developing a piece of content to engage them there. So that's basically, I guess, again, the tip is really understanding what they want, how they're best likely to receive it. So if you're talking to an older audience, then they're probably not going to be perhaps looking at infographic. They might better receive a news article, for example, or a televised interview on local press or on radio. If we're looking at a younger audience, then possibly through social and digital would be a much better way to reach them. So again, the content will be dictated by what you're trying to do and the audience that you're trying to reach.
And it can cover so many different types of things nowadays, can't it? Content, you covered a lot there, infographics, videos. I'm thinking podcasts as well. It's another kind of form of content nowadays, which has just exploded the last few years. Could you get onto a podcast or start your own podcast? That sort of thing. TikTok nowadays, short little videos. There are so many different ways of delivering a message to an audience. But I guess it all comes back to the very beginning, the comms planning bit. So, what's your goal? Who's the audience? Okay, and then how do you put those two bits together most effectively? So if your audience is press, and journalists, then facts, figures, great images, all the stuff you put in a press release is what you want, isn't it? But for another audience, you do it in a different way. So understanding all that, and there must be a bit of creativity goes into this too. It's not all just a process and a science. It's thinking slightly outside the box, right?
No, definitely. And that's the thing about the communications environment is there are so many different talents coming together. So, the writers, the videographers, the talent, the various talents, and you're not expected to be all that. I'm certainly not all those things. However, I have, as I said at the start, in terms of the plan, I have a good understanding of the people I need to work with and bring into that campaign to make it work. So yes, I would work with a freelance videographer who could bring those video skills together, or perhaps a digital marketing expert who could bring those infographics, or a creative who could do that much quicker than I could and make it look a lot better. So yeah, it's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing where the parts fit in and how you drive that. And especially with content, when people do video and it doesn't look good, it's not going to help. So you need to find the right people.
Yeah, brilliant. And final thing, as I was thinking of it and listening to you as well, is like content for websites that generate traffic. It's probably another thing for they call it search engine optimization, right? But can you understand, what Google's looking for? Create content that will bring relevant traffic to your website. That's a really kind of good skill nowadays, and it probably sits within this box as well. Valentina, I see you dropped a message in the chat. Feel free to put that in the Q&A. And then people can vote that as well. But thanks for your message around Kentish plumbers. I can see that. Right, so the last one then. We've done 5 out of 6. The very last one, the skill that employers are looking for, the communication skill employers are looking for across the sector. When we did our big review, it is measuring your success. Okay, and measuring your success, it's all well and good doing everything we just talked about, generating press coverage, producing campaigns, reaching audiences on social media, planning a campaign. But can you really showcase that it's having an impact, that it has been successful? What does success look like? Employers, are increasingly aware of the need to be able to do that, to justify it to themselves, their teams, their donors, I guess. But what does measuring success mean to you, Lloyd, and in this context? And do you have a tip to share with the guys around, how people can just, get to grips a little bit, with regards to measuring communication success? Because it's quite a big, complicated, nebulous area, actually. How do you describe it?
Yeah, completely. And again, it goes back to your plan. Everything it spans from there. So when we're doing our plan, we're looking at our objectives. And from our objectives, we set measurable metrics. Well, every metric is measurable. But in terms of so again, if I look at the super trawler example, how do we measure awareness of people in terms of super trawlers? So where do we start? And where do we finish? So ideally, you'd do maybe a poll in terms of your community and see who or if anyone understands what a super trawler is. And at the end, you do that as a very simple example. So you look at your objectives, say you've got 6 objectives for the campaign, you set a metric on each of those objectives, and your measurement is purely looking at what happens throughout the campaign. And again, that is the key point. I guess the tip really comes from not looking at measurement as an afterthought, but as a process. So measurement is not something, a stick to beat you with, or something for your bosses to say, oh, you haven't done a very good job here, or you have done a good job here. It's allowing you to evolve the campaign at each step. So I can guarantee you the plan will not be perfect. The plan will need to change. Things will change. Issues will break in the news. Super trawlers will go, and then 11 of them will turn up the next day, and you're not looking for that as part of your plan, but it has to happen. So again, you need to be flexible, and the way you can be flexible is see what's working. So through your social profiles, can you see, you're getting more likes on a certain post, and other posts aren't working well, or you're getting more comments and other comments aren't working well. So you can move your focus around on that. So measurement is crucial, not just at the end, but throughout your campaign.
Yeah. so vital. That's great. And setting it up at the beginning, even having that baseline to see how much you've moved the needle, is it's just so powerful. Actually, it's, you know, it really helps to kind of to galvanize and also to clearly justify the work and investing more in what you're doing to show that it has that impact. And it's still a developing area, really. It's quite hard to measure engagement and, you know, impact in these sorts of areas, but it's something that is proving really important and something sought after by employers, which is why we're here this evening really talking about this. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you for sharing, you know, all your tips and knowledge and advice around this area. It's such a big topic. I feel we are just sort of touching the surface, but we're trying to deliver as much value as we can for you guys within this hour session. Another way of us doing that is switching now to Q&A. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes or so for Q&A, maybe even 15 actually. We've done really well for time. I'm really pleased with that. So I'm going to go to Q&A now. Now I can see there's 16 questions in there, and you guys have been voting questions up, which makes our life so much easier. Thank you very much for doing that. So I'm just going to I'm going to go down from the top and work my way down and see how far we can get in the next 10, 15 minutes. Okay, that's as best we can do for you guys. So I think you should be able to see the question actually on screen. I've just hit share. So Kirsten McEwen has asked, as an awareness campaign, what ways did you record the impact beyond opportunities to see in the press? What ways can you evidence increased awareness in local communities, wider public and the political sphere? Perfect. Just what we've been talking about, exactly, measuring success. Could you maybe just go talk a little bit more around that, please, Lloyd?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's the obvious stuff like, you know, if you see your story in the press, then you know that based on that media's reach, then you're building a basic explosion of awareness, if you like. So you can go that route. You can look at the social profiles and see how people are engaging on issues. And as we've done today, I can look at the questions and see that, you know, there's already some knowledge, obviously, around the issues we've been speaking about, but you can see it going up and you can see people asking more questions. So you can, again, use that through your social profiles, judge by the questions that you're getting back and see how people are evolving in their understanding. So awareness doesn't just have to be, you know, more followers on your profile, more coverage. It's really about the conversation and how that change and how the engagement changes. So that's not something you can specifically rank from 1 to 10, but communication doesn't have to be a box ticking exercise where you just go, right, we were at 1 and now we're at 5. So I've certainly seen campaigns that do that, and that's fine if you want to do that. But the reality is the way people understand information, the way they process that information, the way they ask questions is different. You know, we're all different in the way our brains work. So getting an understanding on day 1, as we said, you know, maybe doing some polls and throughout the process and seeing that evolve, I think that's really the crucial thing. And you'll get that feeling, you know, I don't want to make this too intangible, but a lot of the information that we're talking about, a lot of the engagement is really based on human knowledge and how we interact. So you'll get that feeling from the questions you're getting, the feedback you're getting, the organizations that get in touch, the mentions in perhaps legislation and government policy, those kind of things that you'll see coming through over time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for your question, Kirsten. That's really, really insightful. Thank you. I'm going to move down to the next one then. So answer live. There you go. Khan, how do you turn audiences' awareness and reactions, so I guess what we've just been talking about, sort of engagement, you know, into actual actions and changes in policies or behavior? So how can you sort of take the platform that you've raised or created, I guess, through things like press releases and campaigns into something that really makes a difference? People doing things differently or politicians acting, you know, how do you kind of create that wider change that we're trying to achieve?
So again, it's the process, and I'll bring in my friend Sir David Attenborough, who said, you know, very much about this as a communications challenge. So if we look at a communications challenge, then if we take Sir David's quote as verbatim and say, right, so this is a communication challenge now, we are currently, in terms of the bigger issue of the planet, looking at an awareness phase. So we need to raise people's understanding of the problems and then look at the solutions. So once we've got through that awareness phase, or at least we've started building awareness, we then need to educate people. So education is very much the second stage, if you like, towards action. So, right, they get the problem. What can I do about it? Okay, so the opportunities for you to get involved is X, Y, and Z. We know that if you do this less, this will be the outcome. If you do this more, this will be the outcome. And that leads to action. So fundamentally, we're looking at a 3-stage process. We're looking at building awareness of the problem. We're looking at educating them on the opportunities to get involved, to do something, and then the actual action. And the action phase doesn't just happen, obviously. you have to encourage people. You have to give them opportunity to get involved. You have to run events where they can share their experiences, where they can feel like they have their peers with them. We have to give them all sorts of ways of taking that action, but you will only find action. You can't move from there's a super trawler to stopping the super trawlers immediately. You have to have a process, and then to understand how they can stop that or how they can impact that. So it is a process again, as most things are in this sector.
Yeah, that's great. And it sort of makes me reflect about Sir David in his career. He spent his career selling the beauty of nature better than anyone ever has or probably ever will, to people like us, in the outside world, and generating the interest, in the natural world. But only really in the last 5-10 years has he really talked about action and given people things to do and suggested, some of the bigger, wider issues. And look at plastic pollution. He talked about that issue and talked about what we need to do, and suddenly gave people an action linked to that. And we saw, huge change, across the globe quite rapidly, and it's I think shows exactly what you're talking about, educating and then action, into it. I think he's done it ever so well. It's something we all need to do more of. Thanks for your question. Thank you. Kath up next. Lloyd, how did you get your campaign into newspapers? Is there a specific process, or do you just contact them and ask them to run the articles?
I mean, being bluntly honest, I emailed them to start off with, and I spoke to them on the phone. But there, of course, is a process to get there. So what I referred to in the tips where people are looking for media relations as a key skill, that media relations skill comes up from understanding what the journalist wants, as I referenced. So throughout my career, I've built that out, sometimes painfully, sometimes successfully, in understanding what a journalist wants. So I know, as I said, that they want the news up top. So to hook in, they understand the news. They then want the data. So what's backing it up? Give me a reason to write this story. They then want comments from exciting people, so knowledgeable people, so scientists or even celebrities or that kind, anything that gets their interest, if you like. And if I package a story that hits, is newsworthy, has relevant data, has someone that's speaking well and saying something interesting, backed up with more information on the organization I'm working with. And that's the key. The organization stuff comes at the bottom. In terms of that pyramid, upside down pyramid, the organization is the least important part. And that's where people make this mistake. I am calling you from Sussex Dolphin Project. We're amazing because we do all these amazing things with dolphins. And I bet you didn't even know there were dolphins in Sussex. No one cares. What's interesting is the news angle, is what's happening today. Why is it relevant to me today? What data have you got to back that up? Who have you got to speak to me? So anyone can do that. It's simply a process. So yes, the way I did it was to research the relevant contacts. I knew roughly where to look, obviously. I knew that the environment editors of the Nationals would be the best place to start. I then looked at which of those environment editors had written about this sector before. I used those as my low-hanging fruit, if you like, the best place to go first. I then packaged my story in an email in that way, a very brief email, no more than 3 or 4 paragraphs, hitting the information exactly as I said it, with a decent title up front that's short and punchy. And then I either get responses or I don't. And then it's the opportunity to chase up those people. And phoning people, journalists is an art in itself. You have to find the right times, but we could probably spend a whole hour talking about that. But it's about following up the relevant people, obviously answering their questions, and they will always have different angles. They want to have a look at different angles. So the Times don't want to cover the same as the Guardian and don't want to cover the same as the Telegraph in the UK, just the same as the US, as the New York Times don't want to cover the same as the LA Times or wherever that is. They want to cover a slightly different, unique angle. So again, thinking about all those things has allowed not just me, but many other communicators to develop those stories relatively quickly. So again, it's a process. It's not, playing myself down, it's not a talent, it's a process. But yes, it's very much something that anyone can learn.
Right, thank you. And that also links to Catherine Gray. You asked if you don't really have media relationships, what's the best way to start building those? Do you need a dedicated PR rep, or can you start reaching out internally? Do you feel you've answered that already, or is there anything else to add around that?
I mean, journalists love hearing from non-PR people. So, in fact, they'd probably rather that. No, you don't need to have a PR rep. You do need to understand the process. And what you get from someone who has experience is they get the process. If they've had years of experience of doing that, they can do it quickly. But as I've said, if you follow the process, you can do it yourself. And it's just that, you know, doing a few calls with journalists, you will very quickly learn what the right thing is and what the wrong thing is, because they are not shy in telling you, and possibly ranting and swearing, put the phone down. But again, that's all a learning process. And once you know what they want, then you can avoid that and you can jump to the front of the queue, because they quickly notice who understands and who doesn't, and they will engage with you accordingly.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Another one from Catherine, voted to the top. Thanks for your questions, Catherine. Video is becoming more and more important for storytelling, but can be quite expensive for it to be done professionally. Any recommendations for producing videos on a low budget? First, I mean, do you see videos as being quite important within communications? And if so, you know, what's a good way of doing it on a budget?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, definitely video is extremely useful in the ways that I've already described, in terms of communicating sometimes complex issue, as they often are in conservation, not straightforward, in a smaller period of time, very with an actions-based, punchy, interesting piece of content. So yes, I would agree, they are very useful. They don't have to be expensive. And I've seen, you know, even big campaigns from organizations like WWF doing very low budget animations, for example, that carry a really big striking message and have worked really well. So yes, you can spend thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, on these sorts of campaigns, but you do not have to. You know, there's plenty of free opportunities to build your own video, you know, not just by taking a camera out there, but using animation, as I said. You know, platforms like Canva allow you to do simple videos very quickly, and it doesn't have to be, you know, 5 minutes. It can be 30 seconds. So again, there is definitely options out there, and plenty of other platforms as well, not just Canva. I don't work for them, but they're just one that I tend to use myself. And there is lots of other, you can use canned content, you can use content through other providers that provide you royalty-free content as well, and push that together to make a story yourself. So again, it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, there's some honesty actually in just videos that are filmed on mobile phones nowadays too. In fact, in your slides, in your examples, you know, the dolphins jumping on slide 2, they were all presumably just done from a mobile phone.
100%.
A lot of it can be straight to YouTube, you know, and editing software you can get quite cheaply, even free nowadays, you know, as say Canva and others do it, but some quite good editing software really doesn't cost much at all. So I think it's quite accessible nowadays to, you know, just use these things and get going, really. Yeah.
That is the sum total of our citizen science projects, right. In terms of video, you know, and people taking pictures, but it's all through a phone. So, you know, you already have the device that people use, and we've used, well, all of the information we've shared with the media through that campaign was come from a phone fundamentally. So yeah, relatively low cost, if not free, depending on where you get your phone from. But yes.
Great. Okay. Well, we're kind of up on time, I'm afraid, for Q&As, but I am sort of skimming down and having a look. Miranda, I see you're asking about photography and videography skills. We've kind of just touched on them as well. Collins and Rana as well. I can see you guys asking about how do you start. How do you get better at communication skills, you know, in conservation, Collins? And also, Rana, you're asking about what kind of advice we give students who are just finishing their undergrad degree and looking to get into the world of conservation. And I'm going to kind of end on those questions because it kind of leads us in actually to our little special announcement. Because I mentioned at the top, we want to kind of, you know, share a little special announcement here at the end. And the announcement is that we are actually opening up our course, what we call the Conservation Careers Booster. It's Communications for Conservation Projects. Okay. Now, we launched this course late last year. I think it was November time, where Lloyd and I, you know, we launched the course through Conservation Careers, looked to engage people who are looking to kind of start or switch their careers into the conservation sector and want to become more employable. And by focusing on communications that we found through our studies and through our surveys of what employers are looking for, and building and crafting a course to specifically help you to develop those specific skills that employers are looking for. You know, we thought this could be a really good way to kind of help people to get these skills and to become more employable at the same time. And we are looking to launch it again. So the announcement really is we're going to launch again next week. We're looking for Cohort 2, okay, from next week. We're opening it on Monday the 17th. Okay, and it's going to run through for 7 days. We'll have it open until Sunday, the 23rd of May. So it opens on Monday and it closes then the following Sunday, 23rd of May. Now, the goal of the course is to help you to confidently be able to plan and deliver effective communications activities, during your career as a wildlife conservationist, making you more employable, more competitive, and just better at your job as a conservationist as a result. And the structure really follows this detailed analysis that we discovered when we looked at what employers are looking for. Through the course, what you'll learn if you choose to enroll, if you want to have a better look when we do launch it properly on Mondays, we're going to walk through those 6 things actually that we talked through this evening. The first one is, how do you produce a communications plan for conservation projects? Lloyd is going to teach us in detail how to do that. Okay. Number 2, how do you write engaging copy for conservation projects? Then how do you get press and media coverage for conservation projects? Warts and all, nuts and bolts, step by step, okay, process with tasks associated with them, so you can sort of learn how to do this as well as sort of listen. Number 4, how do you build and engage audiences on social media for conservation projects? How do you then create content? And then finally, how do you measure the success of your comms activities? Okay, so there's 6 modules, okay, that sit within the course, really covering the 6 things that we know employers are really looking for. Now, alongside the content, okay, so it's pre-recorded videos and a workbook and tasks associated with that. You also get access to Lloyd, okay, and the Conservation Careers team. So you'll have support from us, me and Lloyd, and also Christy in the comms team by email, by Zoom. Okay, we're going to do a couple of live Zooms, Q&As, just with you guys who are running the course, answering questions, going deeper into things you want to kind of discuss in more detail. And we also have a really kind of interactive Facebook group. Is a private Facebook group just for the people who are going through the course, but also the alumni who are there from Cohort 1 as well. So we'll be with you every step of the way, okay, through this course. Now, it's 6 step-by-step modules. You can attack it entirely at your own pace, okay? So you can do it all back to back if you want and binge it in the Netflix era that we're in, or you can just take your time, okay? You have a whole year's access to us, and to the modules as well. Okay, so it's there. If life happens, if you want to kind of, do it a little bit later, there's no pressure. You just do it at your own pace. You have access to a growing community of online students. We have about 180 people that went through the first Cohort 1 from across the globe, just like you guys this evening. You see from across the planet. It will be the same, with Cohort 2. Hopefully you can share your ideas, ask questions, support one another. The modules include tasks which are really carefully designed by Lloyd to really practice and refine the key skills and get experience of the key skills, which you can then talk to prospective employers about. Beyond all that, you also get access to the Conservation Careers Academy, okay, which means you get access to about 12,000 jobs, volunteer and internships per year that go through our site. You can share your CV with employers. You get 6 ebooks, yada, yada, yada. There's lots within that. There's a 14-day money-back guarantee, okay, and also, so if for whatever reason you're not happy, we give you a 100% refund, no questions asked, okay. And when you complete the course, we also get a certificate of completion, okay, to showcase to employers that you've done it. Okay, now rather the feedback was great from Cohort 1, and before we kind of finally wrap up, I was going to say, Lloyd, what did you think of the feedback? And we did have 100% satisfaction rating. That is God's honest truth. Delighted with. But rather than us talk about that, we asked some of the Cohort 1, would you mind sharing your feedback, with you guys who are here on the call tonight? And some of them very kindly did that. So perhaps the easiest way of sharing feedback actually is just to show, what the guys actually said about their course themselves. So let me quickly share my screen and I'll hit play. So about 3 minutes of listening to what the guys said.
Why did you choose to take the course?
I don't have experience of working in conservation directly. My background is in writing and design, but I do volunteer with a conservation charity and I help out with their digital communications. So I was mostly interested to know, is there anything that I can be doing to improve in my volunteer role? And I was also curious to find out how I might be able to transfer some of my existing skills to help other conservation organisations in future.
I know that I've always been passionate about conservation, but it's such a big field and I sometimes find it difficult to focus on one. So I decided to take this year off to actually explore. And a part of exploration was doing different courses that were appealing to me. And therefore I decided that I would like to take a communications course in order to find in order to learn how to be more effective in my communication?
So my job contract is actually coming to an end soon, so I'm job hunting. I was looking on the Conservation Careers websites for jobs, and I noticed actually quite a lot of job applications, job adverts, were looking for communications skills, and so I was actually already starting to look for communications courses anyway, and Conservation Careers launched their course, and so I kind of jumped on the opportunity really to take it.
What's the most valuable thing you've learned during the course?
I think the most valuable thing is the fact that there's practical elements to it, because it's a great opportunity to consolidate everything you learn in each module. And I think most people are practical learners, so putting newly learned theory into practice is really, really valuable.
Some things have a magic formula, a secret sauce, and other things you just need to practice and get better in practice. The course allows you to do both. So we learned the secret sources, and then we practiced doing the tasks and posting those in the group to get feedback.
What message would you give other people who are considering taking the course?
If you would like to get a better understanding of how to communicate, and you are the kind of person that wants to run a blog or wants to create a Facebook page where you convey such message, I think this is a great course.
I would say to go for it. The structure of the online modules allows you to learn at your own pace, to go back to things when you have the time. And Nick, Lloyd, and the Facebook community are also supportive and really friendly. It's a great atmosphere.
It doesn't matter what field you're working in, whether you work in communications or in research or in project management. I think it's really important to be able to convey what your work is about, and we're much more online now, so people are blogging more, we're more on social media, trying to put out our messages. So learning how to do that effectively, I think, is really important, actually, just to be able to make an impact with your work, whatever work that would be.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the course at all?
Well, yeah, basically just that this course has directly led to me in the interview. I've mentioned it, and they were really, really impressed that I was taking this course. So it's led to me getting a job working in marine conservation. So yeah, I'd just like to thank yourself and Nick for building this course with content that's really given me the skills that I need to get a foot in the door into my dream sector, really.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone who helped organise the course. So Nick, Christine, Lloyd, I really enjoyed it. And I think it's brilliant that there are more people around the world now who are able to help communicate why conservation is so important.
Wow. Well, thank you everyone who participated in that video. On behalf of Lloyd and I, that's some really sort of kind messages, and it's lovely to kind of hear from the participants of Cohort 1. If you're interested to know more about Cohort 2, I say we're opening up again on Monday, closing the following Sunday. Okay, so just keep your eyes on your inboxes. We will be sending some emails about that very soon, and also we'll obviously be promoting it across our communications channels, because that's what we've been discussing tonight, and that's what we'll be doing as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's been wonderful having you all on the call. Thank you for being so engaged as well and staying with us till the end. It's amazing you've all been there throughout. Lloyd, huge thank you to you for sharing your time, your skills, your expertise with us. Always a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much. And I hope you all stay safe and well wherever you are this evening, this morning, whatever time of day it is. Appreciate you turning up and appreciate your time. So that's enough from me. Thank you, guys. You take care. Thank you for all the, I can see your comments coming in. Emma, Catherine, Nicole, Isa, Emmanuel, Tabitha. Thank you so much, everyone. You stay safe, stay well. And it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Lloyd.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.